Hi, and welcome back here on the Senior Network. We were discussing hearing aids, and our wonderful Jessica behind the camera had a question for you. Age range for hearing aids.
So the average person who's fit with a hearing aid for the first time is 69 years old. That's the industry average, but we have clients that are all ages. So we really recommend that people start to get their hearing tested annually at about the age of 50. So whether or not they have a loss, it's just good to get checked. It's good for hearing health to know what's going on, get a baseline is what we call it.
Bob, once we hit 50, we have to get everything checked, don't we?
Sure do.
That's the magic number, I think, with everything,
Yep,
right?
That's it.
What made me think about your nursing staff? Tell me a little bit about the roles that and how they can assist.
Right. Our nurses are registered nurses, and they're our employees. One of the key things that they do that I think is really valuable is they will accompany our clients to doctor's appointments.
Okay, that's awesome.
Maybe not the podiatrist or something that's sort of routine, but especially something involving something more vital. Because you could have the best doctor in the world, but once you leave the office and go home, how do you make sure those doctor's orders are followed? And there can be other indications from other doctors that maybe miss in the communications where an RN's pretty good at picking those things up and being able to report back to the doctor about what's going on with the different doctors. And really, you'd think you'd get some pushback from physicians on that, but that's the exception. Usually they're happy to have sort of that advanced warning or somebody carrying the message home because it's going to be better for their clients overall. We do have some clients too that we have a safety net program that our nurses check in on them usually once a month or if something else happens, updates their med list and make sure we have everything. So, should Mr. or Mrs. Smith fall and break their arm and go to the hospital, we're right there saying they're allergic to this, don't forget about this, and last month they had this procedure, just so they're ready to go. Because sometimes you go to the hospital, many times, a hospitalist, especially if you're admitted, is going to look in on you, not your regular physician.
Exactly.
So if we have a regular nurse looking in on somebody, and a lot of times that's a surviving spouse who always had the other spouse to look in after them, but if they're not there, even some things as sort of simple as you and I might take for granted, maybe not, but just letting somebody know we will make the call, make sure their pets are taken care of, because that's a big thing with seniors. There's some seniors that don't want to seek treatment because they don't want to leave their pet and wind up in a hospital. So if they know that through our network we can make sure everything's taken care of just with a phone call, it's helpful. It seems sort of trivial, a pet, but to a lot of people, pets, and to my family, pets are important. So it goes a long way.
So this program's called a safety net?
Safety net, yeah.
I love that idea. And so is it like an actual task list that you have that the nurses, they all do the same thing when they go in?
Yeah, well, it's a general call just to see how people are going, and it's a call or a stop in once a month, just to check in. And then we look at the meds and make sure there's nothing updated. But we also usually have permission to get medical records too. So that way, an elderly man or woman who maybe has nobody else checking in on them, or it's not somebody consistent that has an eye for what may be something they have to keep an eye on, or a sign that something may be going wrong. And it just helps to go. I mean, you can almost see when you walk to somebody's house over a series of months or years, a decline in just how the house is cared for, or an increase in clutter or something like that. So there's little signs that if you were to walk in and not know, you wouldn't have a baseline. So it's helpful to do that because we can avoid, a little bit of a tragedy down the road if we can get ahead of it.
Great. You had mentioned earlier guardianship, and I don't know a lot about that. So kind of explain, if you will, because that's really a lot higher level responsibility, right?
It is. If you decide you want, and you should, have a power of attorney. Typically, you're going to have a power of attorney for your healthcare needs, and a durable power of attorney for more of your estate, like to pay your bills and everything. So if a tree branch hits you in the head, your healthcare power of attorney will voice your wishes as you wanted them, not how they want them, if you can't do it. As long as you can blink your eye for once for yes and twice for no, you still are making your decisions. Same thing with if you're in the hospital and you have to pay bills, your durable power of attorney can do this. If you haven't made those choices and it goes to the court's version of the healthcare power of attorney is the guardian. And the court's version of the durable, the one that pays the bills, is the conservator. So each of those have a little bit higher level of reporting And sometimes there's different, depending on the situation, there's different regulations the judge will choose to put on the checking account. So a checking account could be reserved or a restricted account, or they can just let it open and you write the check. But then you do a reporting at the end of every year to the courts. So when you're with conservator and guardian are by the court.
Yeah.
But the power of attorney is something, again, I mentioned earlier, but I'll say it again. It's something that's really important for people to make sure they have a power of attorney that they trust and a successor power of attorney, because something, invariably, it's a husband and wife. Something's going to happen to one of them first.
Right.
So if it's just them without a successor, they're exposed to not having somebody to make decisions. And people often think of the will. Well, the will happens after somebody dies.
Right.
This is something you want while you're alive to keep control of how you would want things to go if you're temporarily incapacitated or permanently incapacitated.
And excuse me, I know you're not an estate planning attorney, but you have a lot of knowledge here. So do you know, is like in a trust, like a personal representative, is that kind of the same as the power
Well,
of
the
attorney?
personal representative in the state of South Carolina is what I thought of as an executor.
Okay.
So when somebody dies, I know you're right, I'm not an attorney, so an attorney can correct
Right.
all this, but when somebody dies here, we appoint, there's a personal representative appointed for a will. And in a
Okay.
trust, it's usually your trustee
Right.
that's appointed.
The
A
trustee, okay.
yeah.
That makes sense. I got it. Okay.
But while you're alive, there could be a incapacity trustee, which sort of like your power of attorney while you're, if you're still alive and have a trust.
I understand. Wow, you guys get into a lot of different
Yeah, I
areas.
sit in a
don't
lot of
you?
meetings and hear things, but I'm not an attorney, but I know there's a lot of things. And that's where, because I know there's so much to consider, when I hear about somebody's situation, I try to point them in the right direction, because it could save a lot of money doing the right thing early rather than trying to fix it later.
Right, and I know from experience after 15 years in this industry that, you know, the sooner someone gets to you, the better.
That's right.
You know, and I know that that's a big challenge even in home care. We seem to get there a little too late. But a group like you can really get things set up ahead of time where you avoid a lot of problems down the road.
And it does keep people's independence, because you sort of set the parameters and you set who you want to do everything. So you keep control. Sometimes our clients may think they don't want to make those moves because they'll lose control because they're relinquishing it to somebody else, but they're really relinquishing it to us or to somebody who they appoint to carry out as they would have carried out. So you're really maintaining your
Right.
control.
Very interesting. Well, Brad, I know you talked about time frames. I'm curious. When someone comes in and we start doing the testing like you're talking about, to the time that they actually have the hearing aid, give us an idea of that process.
So it's going to vary from person to person depending on their problems and if they've already been fit with hearing aids or if they're brand new to the process. So I might need to explain a little bit more. But generally, I block off 90 minutes. Okay. So during that time, we can do all the testing. I can present to them what their hearing loss looks like, just explain everything very thoroughly. And then I can actually demonstrate the hearing aids right there in the office. We have all the equipment. I keep them in stock, can fit them mostly on the spot. So they can walk out of there with hearing aids and hearing better and hearing their family within the course of 90 minutes.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. I thought maybe it was something you had to send off and get put together or not, but
Yeah,
you do it right there on the spot.
Right there on the spot, unless they get a custom mold. In that case,
Yeah.
I'll need to do an ear mold impression, capture just the shape and size of the ear, send it into the manufacturer, then they make a custom product. That process can take a week. But generally, if they're doing just an over-the-ear product, they come out of the box, right in their ears, and they're hearing better within 90 minutes.
Right. And now, Bob, you have a new source to help out with
That's
when you
right.
run into situations. Well, Bob, we work together a lot, and I just kind of wondered before the show was over, talk a little bit about the financial side, because that's a big problem out there. When you get in, do you actually do any of the bookkeeping, or do y'all kind of send that out to an accountant?
We do the bookkeeping,
Like helping
more or
with
less
pay
bill
bills?
paying.
Yeah, bill paying.
Yeah.
Right,
When
right.
it comes to anything that requires expertise beyond bookkeeping, and bookkeeping is an expertise in itself, but beyond your general bill paying,
Right.
we refer that to somebody, we refer taxes to somebody, any financial investing and everything like that. Again, we're going to trust somebody to handle those type of things. We're going to monitor it if
Right.
we're tasked with that, just like the person or client would. And even when we talk to clients, we ask them what their intention is ahead of time. Again, the more they can tell us ahead of time, we want to keep this property for our grandson. We want to do, so we know what the plan is ahead of time. So if we don't know, we may think we have to liquidate some properties for their care or something like that. But if we know ahead of time, and that goes with everything financial, because sometimes when people are going through this process, they're maybe not at their best, and they're being asked to do things that they're unfamiliar with.
Right.
And their sons or daughters don't usually know either. So there's a lot of moves and financial things to consider that are sometimes counterintuitive. You may think, oh, I just have to sell my house, but maybe that's not the right thing in a certain situation.
Great information. Thanks, guys, so much. Brad, I really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you, Bob, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Please take a moment, if you will, email us any comments, questions you may have, and thank you all for joining us here on the Senior Network, where senior care experts come together. We'll see you the next time.